Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to today's webinar. The webinar is all about our new software release, UltraMap version 5.0. During the webinar, we give you an introduction in the general UltraMap features, then we talk in detail about the very specific features of UltraMap 5.0, and then we have a kind of a demo on the software system, and we close the webinar with a Q&A session which gives you all the opportunity to ask questions. Today's presenter, our Bernhard Schachinger, he is our specialist in the application team. He will do the deep dive on all the new and latest UltraMap 5.0 features, and myself, Alexander Weichert, CEO of Vexcel Imaging, I am running more of a kind of a general overview of the UltraMap features in general. If you have questions during the webinar, please type your questions into the Q&A section of your Zoom software and we will answer all the questions afterwards. The webinar will be recorded. We will be sending out the link to all the registered participants afterwards. Now let's start with the session about the general UltraMap features. The UltraMap software system is a software system which provides outstanding quality throughout the whole processing chain. That covers all the products from the image processing to AT to dense matching, ortho pipeline and 3D tints. The whole workflow is a fully 16-bit workflow to maintain utmost data quality with all the image modification which will be done during the workflow. The processing covers RGB, near-infrared and also the high-resolution pen processing in one seamless and unique workflow. As I already mentioned, the UltraMap workflow consists of several modules. It all starts with the download, where the data from the data units is being downloaded into the processing system. Then UltraMap starts the first processing step, which is called UltraMap Essentials. This is the very specific processing task where all the geometric and radiometric calibrations are applied, where the stitching is done, and so on. Next step after the essentials would be the AT module, where the area triangulation is done. Once this has been finalized, the data is being handed over to our dense matching module, where we are generating the 3D data like the point cloud, the surface model and the terrain model. Once these data sets have been processed, the next step would be the ortho pipeline, where the 3D data, meaning the surface model or the terrain model, are overlaid with the imagery, and that leads to the standard ortho imagery or the advanced DSM ortho image. The next step in the processing chain would be the 3D tin module, where the software is generating 3D tin structures out of the combined data sets. UltraMap provides a consistent workflow for the full photogrammetric workflow chain, and it is the emphasis in the development of UltraMap was a high degree of automatization. So we are doing as much as possible fully automated, but we always also enable and allow manual adjustment. So if you want to obtain specific results or very special results, then you can always interact manually with the software system too. But in general, the degree of automatization was one of the focus during the development. The modular approach also enables you that literally after the first step, after the UltraMap Essential step, you can always, let's say, escape the UltraMap workflow and use very specific software, as we are providing standard data interfaces after each of the data steps where we are generating the data. Quality control is of course very important through the photogrammetric workflow. So UltraMap covers everything in a very traceable project file and reporting file, so that you have a consistent information about the quality of each of the processing steps you are performing. And that enables the customer to detect any issues at a very early stage. So it's not that you are doing the full processing and after, well, days and days or even weeks, you realize, okay, there was a problem at the very beginning. So we have embedded a lot of tools and reporting that you can really identify problems as soon as they occur and not only at a later stage. A significant advantage of this seamless workflow is of course a consistent user interface. So you have the same user experience throughout the whole processing chain that minimizes any training you need to interact and to use the software. The software system by itself is really very self-explanatory. So once you get a little bit used with a module, you can immediately use that experience also for other modules you want to use in the downstream processing. UltraMap exists already since many years. So we are providing a constant stream of updates with new features. Here we are talking a lot to our customer base. We are receiving constant feedback from our customers, which we are embedding in the software for the utmost benefit of our customer base. The benefits are significant, so you have a seamless experience regardless what UltraCam camera you are using. As a customer, you are involved in the innovation process of our software, so you can really bring in your ideas, and we are absolutely looking forward to any feedback which we are getting from you as our customer. That is super important and helpful for us to develop the best possible software system helping you in your daily life. And then when we have new features or improved algorithms, thanks to the backward compatibility, you can always reprocess older projects and enjoy the benefits from the new algorithms. At Vexcel, we are dedicated to world-class customer support, so we have experts located in different locations across the world, covering North and South America, Europe, and Asia Pacific, to provide utmost 24/7 support to you as a customer. That covers the software UltraMap, but also any hardware issues or questions you might have with your UltraCam system. The support is available in different service level and packages, so it is up to you to decide if you want to include only the software or the hardware, and to which extent you want to have your hardware covered by support and maintenance or spare parts and so on. As a nutshell, as a summary, the customer of Vexcel can really rely on the support of photogrammetric professionals in all aspects, let it be software or hardware. With respect to pricing, we have two different licensing schemes. One is a kind of a lifetime subscription, that's a kind of software purchase, where you buy the software once, you get the current version, and if you decide to go under maintenance, then you are also benefiting from further releases. Or you go into a dedicated subscription module. Here you can pick the subscription period and the amount of licenses you want to have, and inside of this subscription you're always getting the latest software version because the software maintenance is embedded in your subscription license. UltraMap is designed and optimized also for the processing of really large data volumes. A lot of you people might know that we are also extensively flying UltraCams for our Vexcel data program. So we are used to massive data productions of terabytes and petabytes per days and weeks. And the customer base benefits from the experience we are gaining here. Linked to that is the distributed processing, which is fully supported by UltraMap. So you have a job monitor, you can assign machines, and UltraMap makes best use of your resources as you are configuring your IT system in cooperation with the setup of your UltraMap software. That is very flexibly done in UltraMap, and in addition to standard CPU cores, we are also supporting GPU for the dense matching process, which gives you an even more powerful processing system in case you need it. The 3D data processing is quite resource intensive, so it makes absolutely sense to add GPU support if you are running larger projects. And that also can very flexibly configured inside UltraMap. So that brings me to the end of the more general overview about UltraMap features. In the next part of our webinar, I will be handing over to Bernhard, and Bernhard will do a deep dive on the very specific new features of UltraMap 5.0. So Bernhard, the floor is yours, and ladies and gentlemen, I wish you big fun, and hope you learn a lot of interesting topics now when Bernhard talks about the specifics of UltraMap 5.0. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexander. Hello, good morning and good afternoon from my side. My name is Bernhard Schachinger and I work as application specialist here at Vexcel Imaging in Graz, Austria. I will give you an overview of the new features of UltraMap V5 and highlight some of the new tools with live demos. The new UltraMap V5 fully supports all our cameras, so data from all UltraCams can be processed, such as the older UCX and UCX Prime, or the brand new UCO 4.1, our flagship for nadir and oblique image capturing. From the long list of new features in UltraMap V5, I've picked a few to explain in more detail and give little live demos. Let's start with the new workflow for data treatment. Many projects require that certain areas in the image data are blurred, pixelated, or even completely removed. These areas could be critical infrastructure, military installations, or other objects which are restricted by the authorities to be shown in the image data. The new UltraMap version supports the following workflow. First, the photo flight is done to capture the imagery. Then the raw imagery needs to be split in two parts. One with all the images which are fine and don't need any treatment, and the other part with images which need to be modified. This segmentation of the imagery could be done, for example, by overlaying the image footprints with polygons of the restricted areas and selecting the affected image numbers. Next, the images that are fine can be processed in UltraMap with the default workflow. For the other part of the images, the UltraMap Raw Data Center provides an option to create TIFF files. In the next step, these TIFF files can then be blurred or pixelated in any third-party software according to the needs of the authorities or government. And then next, both parts of the imagery can be imported into UltraMap Studio and be merged to one block, now consisting of both pixelated and non-pixelated images. From this point onwards, the workflow is exactly the same as with any other UltraCam dataset. In the following live demo, I would like to show you an example from our data program VDP. This AOI in Finland was captured with an UltraCam Condor at 20 cm ground sampling distance, and two sensitive areas are within the project boundaries. VDP takes security concerns seriously, therefore this workflow is an essential part of our data handling. So in a first step, critical images were selected and removed from the default processing. Therefore, we see here these holes for the missing shot positions. These missing images were processed separately in RDC to TIFF and then modified in third-party software by reducing the image resolution for the affected regions. After that, the images were imported back into UltraMap with this new tool here, which is a processing step to convert the images from TIFF back to the internal file format. Then, both groups of images were merged, and from there the normal workflow continues. The pixelated images are used throughout the entire workflow. Therefore, there is no risk of having full resolution image content for the restricted areas. We process this data until the auto products, where we can see the effect of the data treatment in the final full resolution ortho mosaic. Here is the imagery with the original image quality and resolution. Going further into the west direction, we suddenly see that the image resolution degrades, and this is exactly the area which was pixelated earlier. Here, reduction of image resolution was probably necessary to hide details on these vessels. The second new feature I would like to talk about is the new environment for the auto production workflow, which includes generation of the DSM, DTM, DSM Ortho, and DTM Ortho. This was a separate software module in earlier versions of UltraMap and is now fully integrated into UltraMap Studio. The benefit is to have a unified workflow from data ingest to the final products, with full documentation of all workflow steps. Additionally, the data structure was adapted so that reprocessing of tile selections is now easier compared to earlier UltraMap versions. Also, reprocessing of tiles after edits is accelerated. And certain features such as GCBs can now be displayed throughout the workflow, ranging from the GCB measurement functionality in the AT to overlays for quality control in the auto stage. Finally, UltraMap version 5 includes a new automated approach for creating the digital terrain model, the DTM. This starts with semantic image segmentation to identify image content which shows ground level and non-ground level, as shown here in the example of the bluish mask on the right-hand side. Then the DSM is processed and combined with the ground and non-ground information. All ground areas from the DSM are transferred to the DTM, and the holes in between are filled with interpolated values from the surrounding pixels. The resulting DTM can be inspected for quality control, and in cases where needed, manual editing with the enhanced height field editor can be done. The editor is based on the old DSM editor and was extended with new tools for the DTM, including refinements also for the handling of the DSM, such as displaying and manually setting the value for the height brush. Depending on the application of the DTM, bridges might be needed to be included in the DTM, or they should be eliminated from the DTM. For orthophoto production, it makes sense to keep the bridges, to get the geometry of the bridges in the orthos right. For other applications like watershed analysis, bridges should be removed. To take care of that requirement in the automated processing, the preferred parameter can be selected when starting the DTM job. Alternatively, the editor can be used after the processing to manually include or exclude certain features, such as the bridges. So let's have a look at an example for the new DTM. This is another dataset from our data program VDP, Berlin City Center, captured with the new UCO 4.1 at about 8 cm ground sampling distance. The DSM, DTM, and orthos have been processed fully automatically with the new approach within UltraMap Studio. With the Contents buttons in the top menu bar, we can switch the display between the different products. Let's have a closer look at the DTM. This was processed fully automatically with the option to keep the bridges switched on. Therefore, most bridges and the elevated railway lines are preserved from the DSM. Switching on, the layer for the non-ground objects shows in blue all parts that were removed from the DSM. Dark blue means that the resulting DTM is lower than the DSM, while light blue means that the DTM gets higher elevation than the DSM for these coordinates. Where there is no blue, the height from the DSM is also used in the DTM. To make QC even more easy, we have this button to highlight all the bridges in yellow that were detected automatically and preserved for the DTM. Let's check a few of these tiles in the 3D interface of the editor. The new editor supports to view both datasets, the DSM and the DTM, and overlay with the ortho for easy orientation. The mask with non-ground objects is also available here, and let's see how that works. The Reichstag building is well reconstructed in the DSM and removed in the DTM. However, this ramp here in front of the building partly remains in the DTM as the software considers this to be a part of the terrain. Using the mask tools, we can easily either fully include the ramp in the DTM or eliminate it. Here is another example for modifying the DTM. Because of the processing parameter to preserve the bridges in the DTM, this pedestrian bridge between the two building parts is correctly detected and kept in the DTM. If it is not needed in the DTM, then it can be easily removed by applying the smoothing tool like this. Finally, I would like to switch back to the earlier example from Finland to show another DTM. The semantic image segmentation worked very well and could successfully identify buildings, vegetation, and roads. If any of the removed objects should be included in the DTM, we can easily select them in the DSM and bring them into the DTM. Any steps of the border of the edited region can be removed to get a smooth transition in the height field. After modifying the DSM and the DTM, the ortho module supports, of course, easy reprocessing of the orthos based on the new geometry of the projection surface. To get best possible quality ortho products, UltraMap includes additional tools to visualize and modify the ortho seam lines of the mosaic. The seam lines are generated automatically by the software, mostly by looking at the difference from the DTM to the DSM and the RGB values. This interface allows to easily see the images which contribute to the ortho mosaic and modify the boundaries between the images as well as select alternative images. Any edits that are done to the seam lines are applied instantly to the data. Last, I would like to show some impressive results from the final stage in the UltraMap workflow, the 3D processing. This example is again from Berlin and was captured with the new UCO 4.1. The 3D mesh was processed fully automatically and shows the fantastic quality of the image data that is captured with the new camera. Both nadir and oblique images were used to process this 3D model. That's it for my part of the presentation. Thank you, and I'm handing back over to Alexander.
Thank you very much, Bernhard, for this interesting deep dive into the UltraMap 5.0 features. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy now to open the Q&A session of this webinar. If you have not already done, please be so kind and type in the questions into the Q&A pane of the software system, and we are looking forward to receive them and provide you with the answers. Thank you.
There's already one first question concerning the blurring of images on military zones. So the question is, this new option of blurring images on military zones, does it blur the complete image, which is intersecting the polygon of the military area, or does it blur only the area on the images overlapping the military zone? I would say the latter one, but I would love to hand over this question to Bernhard just to make sure that my thinking is correct.
Yeah, thanks for this question. So this workflow for data treatment is designed in a way that the blurring of images can be done by third-party software. So very often we see that customers have certain software that they need to use to apply this blurring. This software very often needs to be certified by the authorities, by the local government, or by the military, and therefore the blurring itself, it cannot be done by UltraMap. It needs to be done by this third-party software, which is certified by the local agencies. Therefore, the workflow that we support now, this workflow allows to write the images to a file format which is readable by a third-party software for doing this blurring, and then importing back the data into UltraMap and then merging all that within the internal data structure to be ready for the further workflow. I hope that answers this question.
Great, Bernhard. Thank you very much. Next question, can we introduce some vector data as hard break lines in the DTM editing tool?
Yeah, so right now, we do not yet support the import of external vector data. However, we have that on our list for future improvements of that workflow. And still, we do already support manual creation, manual editing of break lines in the DTM editor. So the DTM editor, as it is available now, that allows to modify break lines, to create break lines where needed, or also to delete them. And using these break lines, you can fully modify the DTM internally in the software.
Thanks again, Bernhard. Is it possible to import an external DTM? Bernhard, again, a question for you.
Yes. So the software supports the import of an external DTM for the creation of the DTM orthophotos. So this could be either a DTM covering all of the project area. If you need to use the DTM from an external supplier or an existing DTM of your project area, or this might also be useful in other scenarios where you have large forested areas and urban area. Let's say in the urban area, the creation of the DTM within UltraMap with the photogrammetric workflow works very well. But in the forested area, the DTM has some limits when created by the photogrammetric workflow. Therefore, the software allows to mix the internal DTM within UltraMap and the external DTM from other sources like LiDAR. And then you can, after this mix in UltraMap, you can take advantage of the combined DTM and do the full orthophoto production within UltraMap.
Great. So importing images means can we use images from different camera other than UltraCam? So that was probably a bit of a misunderstanding of what we mean with importing images. And Bernhard might clarify the details. So I'll just give a high-level answer. So currently it is not possible to use UltraMap with other cameras other than UltraCam. We are thinking about it. We have it on our roadmap. So we might see input filters for other cameras coming next year. But for now, it is an absolutely UltraCam specific software. And Bernhard, please be so kind and clarify on importing the images with respect to the features you described.
Yeah, I fully agree that this workflow works for UltraCam imagery only. The reason is that when importing the data back into UltraMap, the software does not only read the image data, and there is also some metadata that we need to import. I will not give details on that, since this is a lot of text files or binary files with information about the stitching and so on. So all the data that is usually in the normal UltraMap workflow integrated when processing from level 0 to level 2, all that metadata, that is then also kept for this workflow for data treatment and imported back when reading the TIFF. Therefore, this is not a workaround to work with data from third-party cameras. It's rather a way to allow modification of the image data with external software and then get back into the UltraMap workflow to take all advantages from this.
Thank you very much. Morning. With the UltraMap modules being in one workflow, does the studio project data and the also pipeline data have to be stored in the same place? We currently have them in separate stores.
Yeah, so there's now one single project file for all the processing steps within UltraMap Studio, including error triangulation, color balancing, DSM and DTM processing, the ortho processing, and finally the 3D processing. So all that is stored within one UltraMap project file. However, the working directories can get very large in size for projects with a huge number of images. And for each single processing step, you can select a destination of where to process data, where to store the temporary working data, and where to store the results of this processing step. So it is definitely supported to have different storage locations for some project data, and for other project data you can have other storage location. Like for the DSM processing, you might want to have an optimized file server for large number of files for fast file transfer. So this is very well supported.
Fantastic, great news. Next question, what's the time to generate DTM or DSM?
Yeah, so this is a very tricky question, since time requirement for doing processing depends on a lot of factors. So on the one hand, there's the processing hardware that is available. On the other hand, there's the size of the AOI and the number of images that needs to be processed. So I cannot give any number here, but I can give you some idea of what is the influencing factor. So for the processing, we support the use of CPUs and GPUs. And the number of CPUs, that is flexible. Flexible on the one hand, the number of CPUs that is used within one processing server. On the other hand, you can connect almost any unlimited number of servers to one processing framework. So there is no limit on the software side, on the technical side. The only limit on how many CPU cores to use and how many servers to use, that is the license. The same is also true for the GPU support. Dense matching can be done on the GPU, which is faster than the CPU, typically ranging somewhere in the factor of 2 or 3 to 5 or even higher, depending on what type of CPU you compare to the GPU. And the GPUs, yeah, there can be one or multiple GPUs within one server, or there can be a number of servers, all being equipped with GPUs. So that is very flexible, and the configuration can be fully done according to the project needs to meet the time frame.
Perfect. Thank you, Bernhard. Next question. When you export in RDC to TIFF, you get 2 files, one for pen and one for color. What file should you modify in the third-party software to afterwards import them back in UltraMap?
Yeah, so this modification should be done to both types, to both files of the image. So in the panchromatic image and in the color image, you need to do this special treatment of the data that is necessary. And that's also true for the oblique camera. So if you are using the Osprey, you should do this blurring, both in the nadir image and in all the oblique images that see this object which needs to be pixelated or blurred.
Good. Next question, possible to export DTM, DSM?
Yeah, so we support the file format GeoTIFF at the moment for exporting the data. In an option, additionally, we write world files. Additionally, there's also the export for point clouds in the LAS file format. For exporting the data, there are tools to define map sheets, so the user can define a grid system with the origin and tile grid size, and that is then applied to the export so that all the exported data is compliant to your end users, your clients' requirements.
Perfect, great. Thank you very much. Currently, we don't see any open questions. All right, next question is coming in. Fantastic. How many users can work with UltraMap at the same time? I assume that's only a question of the licensing, but Bernhard, please again provide details to that.
Yeah, so great question. The number of users who can work with the UltraMap software is unlimited. So the only limit that we apply with our license, this is for the processing. Only the number of CPU cores that are usable within the processing, that is limited by the software. And the software license does also restrict the modules that are available. So with the, let's say, error triangulation license, you cannot run the dense matching. But the number of operators working with the error triangulation module, this number is unlimited. So this could be 5 operators, could be 10, could be 20, or even 50 operators, all working on error triangulation projects.
Great. All right. Another question coming in. Imagine that we introduce an external DTM, TIFF raster format, for example. What would be the reaction of the software on the places where the introduced DTM differs to the existing image context? What would your advice be for the workflow on those specific locations?
Yeah, great question. So we offer this tool to import the external DTM data for 2 reasons. So the one reason is because of the project requirements, you have to use a specific DTM. Therefore, this DTM is then the projection surface for the auto, and all of the project is in that way done according to specifications. On the other hand, we offer to import the external DTM in case that the DTM within UltraMap cannot be fully produced according to specification, because maybe there are a lot of trees hiding the ground, you don't see the ground, you can't use the DTM. So if doing that, the software does not have any technical limits with the external DTM being different to the existing image content. The software will always try to read this height field to interpret the heights and do the image rectification based on these heights. If the heights of the external DTM are wrong or are far off by some reason, the software will not give an error, but the software will do the rectification of the images accordingly to that height, and will also do the orthomosaic accordingly. So this is in the responsibility of the user to get the height right, to to import data which matches the images, and then you get a good product.
Great. Next question. Is there a possibility that two persons work on the same project at the same time? For example, one is working on orthophoto and the other on 3D production?
UltraMap does not yet fully support the multi-user concept for working with the data. So UltraMap is not yet integrated like any Office application where you know that multiple users can work on the same dock or a table in a browser. However, there are ways that one data set, one project can be used by multiple users, like here in the example for orthophoto production and 3D production. So there are some ways to allow both users to interact with the data.
Correct. Is the semantic segmentation of the image in DTM and DSM areas, ground and above ground, part of UltraMap?
Yes, so the semantic image segmentation is done fully automatically within UltraMap. So whenever you start with the new software version, the processing of the DSM and the DTM, the image segmentation runs in the background and is doing its job, is trying to identify objects which are at ground level and objects which are above ground level. And and then it will display the results. This segmentation, this can also then be modified in the editor as we have seen in the examples.
Good. Is it possible to export the segmentation?
Right now, the segmentation cannot yet be exported. So the reason is that we are starting with that new approach. We are now gathering experience. We are trying to refine the algorithms. We are also doing still a lot of training for the machine learning algorithms that we have implemented. But long term, we are definitely looking at the option to export the segmentation data.
Great. What is the performance in forest areas?
Yeah, so this depends on the forest. For the DSM, any forest area is fine, and the DSM will show the tree crowns. For the DTM, the success of the DTM creation depends on the forest area. If it is a very dense forested area where not really any pixels see the ground, then it is hard to identify the DTM. If it is a forest where you with the human eye can see ground pixel, then the DTM will also be successful. If it is not the automated approach, then the manual approach. In the editor, you can overlay the DTM with the ortho. You can also switch to the DSM and back. Therefore, for forest areas where you still see a few of the ground pixel, I'm very optimistic that you can generate a high quality DTM.
Is it possible to exclude water bodies from DSM, DTM automatically?
So with the new approach with image segmentation, we have now a new detection of the water bodies in the workflow. Right now, the processing step which takes most benefit of that is the color balancing. When you compare a color balancing mask from V5 to the color balancing mask of earlier UltraMap versions, you will see a great difference. And now the color balancing mask is a very, very detailed representation of the water body. So right now, this new mask is used in the color balancing, and we are working on getting the new water bodies also being used for the DSM and the DTM. So we are talking about, on the one hand, flattening the water bodies, on the other hand, getting a good texturing for the water bodies in the auto products. So some steps are already available, some steps we are working on with regard to water bodies.
Next question coming in. Is it possible to import an external DTM in form of tin, I assume? Tin, yeah, tin.
So right now we support the import in GUT file format. So if you have data in other formats, please bring that into the GOT file format, and then you can import the data. In addition to the GOT tiles, you can also import the polygon. And if you combine the GOT import with the polygon, then the imported data will only be applied to the polygon area. So that makes sense. If you want to use the external DTM only for a little forest or something like that, then you don't overwrite all the DTM with the imported data, but only for the selected region.
There was another question coming up. We previously had a problem importing DTM in the southern hemisphere. Is this still a problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are aware of these problems that were with earlier software versions. We tried to fix that. I hope that this issue is now resolved, and this should work. If there is still the problem with the data in your region, then please let us know, and we are very happy to hear your feedback.
Can UltraMap talk to ArcGIS and AutoCAD Civil 3D? Bernhard, that's a question for you, please.
Yeah, so from the UltraMap software, we can export the data to standard file formats, among them GOT files. Also, certain data can be exported as point clouds to LAS format or to shapefiles. So all these files can be well understood by the software ArcGIS and AutoCAD Civil 3D. So yes, there is definitely an interface possible.
Great. Next question is, with UltraMap 5.0, are we able to load shape files in UltraMap Studio? Bernhard,
yeah, so there are several points in the workflow where it makes sense to import vector data, to import shapefiles, or also GeoJSON files. So for example, when importing a DTM from an external source, you can import a shapefile along with the DTM, and that shapefile then defines the region of where the DTM from external source should replace the internal DTM. And on the other hand, later on in the workflow, when exporting the data or when preparing the data for export, you can load map sheet definitions in shapefile format, and then use these map sheets to select the data for the final export of the data products.
Great, thanks. Is it possible to run UltraMap in the cloud, for example, AWS?
Well, right now, UltraMap does not yet officially support processing in the cloud. We still require a dongle on a USB key, and that dongle needs to be attached to a coordinator. So you somehow need to have access to a USB port in the cloud, or to a PC that interacts with the cloud, that allows to hold this key. Otherwise, there's not really then any limitation. So the software does not block processing in the cloud. If you set up the system according to the requirements that are published in the release notes, then cloud processing servers might be usable. However, as I mentioned before, we still need to use the USB license key that needs to attach to a PC.
Great. Can I provide feedback when I test the new DTM workflow, who to contact? Answer is, of course, we are super happy on receiving feedback. That is essential for us to improve further our software and to add new features. So please be so kind and provide feedback. And contact would be either the local sales representative or our support team. Email address is support@vexcel-imaging.com. So if you have feedback, please send that to us. And we are more than happy to receive it. Is there a demo version of the app available? So we can issue demo licenses for a time-limited period of testing, of course. Is there any plan to have an output of a classified point cloud? Bernhard, please be so kind.
Yeah, so semantic image segmentation is now part of the UltraMap workflow. The segmentation data is used in some steps of the processing. The point cloud that is exported right now, this does not yet include any of the segmentation data. The point cloud now can have RGB values per point, or optionally, we could also add the near-infrared channel to the export of the points. Then doing the export of a classified point cloud, so including some classification data with the point cloud, that would be a feature for the future. So we definitely plan to add more features for the full segmentation workflow, for the classification workflow, and enhancing the export of the point cloud and enriching with this information. This might be an option for the future. Yes, good point.
Good. Which format can also Seamline be exported?
The ortho seamlines can be exported right now as shapefiles, so polygons, or we can export raster files. So similar as the colorful mask that we showed in the live demo, the raster files can be exported. These are called contribution masks. These raster files have exactly the same resolution as the orthophoto. Every single pixel has in this mask one color, and this color represents one single input image. We then also export a legend to translate all the various color values to the input image numbers. So that allows to fully document every single pixel of the orthomosaic, where it comes from. So this does even have more information than the vector data export, which is generalized and does not describe every single pixel, because otherwise the file would be just too large with too many vertices.
Good. So what is the recommended forward and side overlaps for DSM ortho and 3D production from nadir only and oblique sensors?
Yeah, so this is a tricky question. Depends a little bit on the type of project you are doing, the terrain that is mapped, and also the requirements on the final output data, on the final results. So in a dense urban area, like in the example with Berlin, it makes sense to use a high image overlap of 80% forward, 60% sideward to get good coverage of all the buildings and also the details in between the buildings. And this overlap is true for both the nadir only and also the oblique sensors. So the oblique camera, the new UCO 4.1, also the older oblique cameras, they are all designed to capture data with this classical standard overlap of 80-60, and with that overlap you get good coverage in both viewing directions, nadir and oblique, to do the full 3D reconstruction of the buildings.
Great, thanks. Can a DTM captured with LiDAR imported and used by UltraMap? Bernhard, please be so kind and jump on that too.
Yeah, so the external DTM that can be imported to UltraMap, that is flexible where it comes from. So there are just a few requirements on the format so that the data file itself can be interpreted by UltraMap. But otherwise, if the data comes from LiDAR acquisition, or if it comes from any other measurement, that is irrelevant, and UltraMap will support the data.
Great. Next question is, are there plans to export AT results into vendor-specific formats like Info or ZI?
Yeah, we allow now to export a number of formats. So we have text file formats for all types of data of the aerosimulation module. Then we export full bingo projects, and we export BAT-B files, and along with camera definition files. So with the data that is exported right now, we think that almost all use cases can be done, and with a few clicks the data can be imported to a lot of third-party software. If there is any use case where you do not have the data in the format you need, and yeah, you're blocked with doing a workflow, then please let us know, and we would like to learn in detail the requirements and then consider if we need to implement additional formats.
Can I work parallel on several projects in UltraMap 5, for example, develop images and compute AT and produce DOPs?
Yes, so UltraMap supports very well processing in parallel on the hardware system. So as discussed during the session, there is the job monitor, this UltraMap framework, which takes care of all the processing jobs on the system. So there is an automated distribution of all the processing tasks on the available hardware. So processing in parallel, that is very well supported. And then doing the workflow with aerosimulation, color balancing, and so on. This can also be done in parallel. So, and multiple projects can be open at the same time. Users can interact with that. The number of UltraMap Studio instances to open and to work with data is not limited. So there can be a flexible number of operators working on AT, color balancing, and so on. The only thing that is limited is the number of CPU cores and the number of GPUs, which can be used for processing.
Good. Next question is, can UltraMap import a polygon to define a water area to improve the type point collection?
So we have now this image segmentation included in the workflow. And with this image segmentation, our plan is to have more and more modules in the software to take advantage of the knowledge of where is what in the project area. So right now, with this version of the software, we support to use the water area for the color balancing. But later on, we definitely plan to use the the water areas, also for the type point collection, and also for DSM production and so on. So on the one hand, we trust a lot in this automated procedure in the semantic image segmentation by machine learning. On the other hand, we know and we are aware that any automated procedure will not produce 100% perfect result. So we are offering tools on the one hand to edit the masks. On the other hand, we are working on features to import the mask from an external source.
All right, and is it possible to import break lines?
Break lines are not yet supported to be imported. However, in the editor, break lines can be generated or can be modified. So there is already an interface for that. But importing break lines, that is on our list of ideas we want to work on, and very likely that this will come soon.
Good. Is it possible to export edited mask of color balancing in a SHP or custom format in order to use the same mask on another flight mission on the same area?
Not yet. So right now, the color balancing mask is used only internally within the software for UltraMap processing. But as we maybe later on extend the functionality for the image segmentation and so on, then this might also be a data set that will be supported to export.
Good. On the Berlin project, what was the configuration, the flight configuration, overlap in percentage?
Yeah, so this was done with the new UCO 4.1, so our new oblique camera, and the ground sampling distance was 7.5 to 8 centimeters, so it was not exactly the same for all flight lines due to ATC restrictions. For some lines there was even a little bit more deviation, but in average it was 8 centimeter, and we had an overlap of 80% forward and 60% sideward.
Great. What IT is required to run DTM workflow, and what processing time can be expected?
Yeah, so regarding
and linked to that, what is the recommended number of CPUs to process a 3D map of dense urban area like Manhattan? Maybe that's an answer you can combine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for regarding the hardware, we support the processing with Intel CPUs. So there should be Intel CPUs, and then depending on the number of CPUs, we recommend to use a minimum number of memory. So the lowest number we recommend is 4 GB RAM per CPU core for the processing. For the front end, so for the workplace where the operator is interacting with the data, the CPU is more flexible, but this strongly depends on the GPU, on the local GPU for displaying the data in 3D in the editor. So for that we require an NVIDIA graphic card with some memory. Detailed specifications of what is required are in the release notes document of the software. So please have a look there. And what processing time can be expected? Yeah, this is a tricky question, as the processing time requirement often depends on the project area, on the parameters of the flight, and and also on the hardware that is available for the processing. So difficult to give a number here. If you are more interested in that, you could follow up via email, and then we can give an estimation based on your project parameters. So, and then what is the recommended number of CPUs to process a 3D map? Yeah, similar as before. This depends on the project parameters, on the time frame you want to achieve, also on the size of the project, on the image numbers. Yeah. Difficult to give a number if it is just a small area with a few building blocks. 50 or 100 CPU cores might be fine to process the result quite quickly. But if it is all of Manhattan and needs to be processed in a short amount of time, you might need to increase the number of CPUs to a few hundreds. But of course, all that depends on the project parameters. So to give a clear answer to that, please follow up via email.
Thank you, Bernhard. I know these questions are super difficult to answer, as it depends on so many parameters. I think we probably answered already, but I just want to double check. Can UltraMap import an SHP file to define area of interest to export?
Yeah, so we can, or UltraMap supports to import the shapefile with map sheets. So map sheets, that is a grid where the user can define the origin of the grid and the tile size of all the grid cells. And then these grid cells can be selected for the export. You can select either all of those grid cells, or you can select just a few single grid cells to export. So this is the typical workflow. This is how you define all the tiles to export. And for that, you can import from a shapefile. Yeah.
Good. The type point filter is a nice option on the module of AT. Can be possible to add also an option to skip specific points, which has bad receivables, except the blunder removal at the bundle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the type point filter, this is a tool which was developed with the goal of reducing the amount of type points in a project in a smart way. So there are certain criteria to reduce the number of type points. So one criteria is in areas where there is a high point density, we can reduce the density without losing any linkage of the photos. And reducing the points or selecting these points, that can be done depending on the distance to the other type points, or this can also be done on the reprojection area, on the number of links and so on. So in the type point filtering process, the algorithm does already consider also the quality of these points. I understand this question in a little bit different way, not only for reducing the type point density, but also to do a selection of points based on quality measures. So right now, selection of points is available via the Data Explorer. There you might be able to filter already a little bit and then delete these points. Yeah, if this is still not yet enough to do the task you need to do for your project, then please let us know, because we are very interested to learn your requirements to do any additional filtering of the points.
So great. Regarding the shape files we load in UltraMap, can we load points, lines, or polygons? Previously, we could load only polygons.
Yeah. So right now, the import of polygons is supported because at these steps in the workflow where you import the data, polygons make the most sense to describe the information that is needed. But yeah, why not? So if there is a use case, if there is a need in the workflow for any future version, a future task, then we might also support other data types. So it depends on where, at which step in the workflow we want to import what kind of data.
Good. And then we have additional questions which came in through the chat. I just want to double check. So here we have a question. Are the oblique images included in the AT and or DSM calculus?
Yes. Oblique images are included in the error accumulation. This is a parameter that the user can select. So for projects that are captured with the Osprey camera, the user can select to either do just a very basic version, use the nadir photos only, or all the oblique images can be included. And then if this is selected, then the oblique images are included for the type point collection and for the color balancing. So both the error triangulation result and also the radiometric adjustment result are fully consistent for all viewing directions from nadir and oblique. Then for the DSM processing, this is a nadir only workflow, but the 3D processing, the 3D mesh, so the 3D model that I showed at the end of the live demo, that was processed with using the nadir and oblique images.
Great, thank you. One remaining question from the chat. I have read that GeoJSON files are native using WGS84. It takes some extra work to make the GeoJSON be a different coordinate system. Should the coordinate system for the GeoJSON file match your EO image coordinates?
Yeah, so very important point. The files that you import, these need to match your EO, the exterior orientation, and the image coordinates. Well, the image coordinates, these are in the pixel units in the image system anyway, but all the coordinates which are in the world coordinate system, these need to match. So that is true for the ground control points, for the GPS data, for the map sheet files, any other data that you combine throughout the UltraMap workflow. And there are tools to do conversion for the GeoJSON file to these coordinate systems. So that will work. So there are ways to do that. If you have any more specific questions on that, please follow up via email, and I'm happy to discuss that in more detail.
Something dropping in, what are current objectives for the next releases of software? So clearly we don't stop innovating and adding new features. Bernhard, can you share a bit on what's next on the roadmap with respect to features? What are the key topics we continue working on? Yeah, so in the very near future, we want to get rid of this little added expression of a release candidate in our software name. So as you maybe have noticed, UltraMap version 5 is now available as a release candidate. That means we wanted to offer you already to work with the new software workflow, with the new approach for producing the DTM, but not yet all functionality that we have planned for the DTM handling is included. So we are still implementing a few new features, also working on a few features that were in the previous version of the ortho production module and are not yet now fully integrated into Studio, but all that will come. We have that already in the pipeline to be available short term. So this is the next step.
Then we're working on automated handling of water bodies for DSM and auto production, also of course for the DTM. We want to take care of the water bodies during the dense matching to make the water body flat, and also provide some options for the ortho texturing in these areas. Not only doing that in an automated way with internal data, but also providing some interface for exporting data from for interface for importing data from an external source. There are a lot of other new exciting things on our roadmap. More of that will be shown later.
Good. And is UltraMap also pipeline still in use with UltraMap 5?
Yeah, UltraMap auto production module, this is now fully integrated into UltraMap Studio. So for any projects you start now new, you can do the full processing in UltraMap version 5. But for projects that you have started in production already with version 4, so there exists already some processing results in version 4, you can continue now with an UltraMap auto production legacy version in UltraMap 5. So for UltraMap 5, we have integrated both the new auto production workflow within UltraMap Studio, and we have also this standalone auto production module as you have seen in version 4 to continue these old existing projects. But this standalone auto production module, this will be removed from the software package with one of the next releases to make then a clean workflow with version 5.
Great, perfect. Thanks again. All right. Okay, so now still questions coming in. Is there plans to have the coordinator push updates to the nodes for future releases?
Yeah, so I understand this now as a question regarding the installation process. If I don't understand this in the way as you intend, then please let us know. But to make the installation process or the update process of the software on the processing system easier, we are discussing strategies of how we could make that easier. If you have a huge number of processing servers, then the conventional approach of installing the software on every single machine takes a long time. Therefore, we are aware of the need to somehow automate this pushing the new software version to all processing servers. So yeah, we are aware of that. We are discussing the ways how to improve that, and we definitely plan to offer there something more for you to do it in an easy way.
I would like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining the webinar. I do hope that you found it interesting and worth your time. I would like also to thank Bernhard for the excellent presentation, and also thanks a lot to Claudia and the marketing team for preparing the stuff and doing the videos and so on. As we don't see any more questions coming in, let's close the webinar. Thanks again, take care, and I really do hope to see you all in person soon again.